The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, needs to, quote, urgently address the, quote, non-existent care for people with ME or chronic fatigue syndrome. That's the finding in today's Prevention of Future Deaths reports, based on the case of Maeve Boothby O'Neill, who became malnourished and eventually died at the age of 27 because doctors were, in the coroner's words, unable to treat the consequences of her severe ME. The report by the coroner, Deborah Archer, highlights a lack of specialist hospital beds and expertise about a poorly understood condition whose symptoms, or similar ones to it, are experienced by an estimated 1.3 million people in the UK. Karen Hargrave is the founder of the There for ME campaign group. Both she and her husband James developed ME after contracting COVID-19.
So I got sick sort of over 4 years ago now, and luckily these days my symptoms are pretty mild. But my husband got sick around 2.5 years ago, and he deteriorated very, very rapidly throughout last year, to the point that he's now completely dependent on full-time care. He's fully bedbound at the moment, and he has these difficulties swallowing. And he also has very severe cognitive difficulty, sort of to the extent that, unfortunately, he's not able to have a conversation.
Well, joining us now, Sonya Chowdhury, who's CEO of Action for ME and chair of the World ME Alliance. Good evening.
Good evening.
Why is so little known about ME?
We know that there's been a paucity of research. We do not have the scientific knowledge that exists with other illnesses. And despite recognising that there are challenges around funding the research, things just haven't changed over the last decade and beyond that. Alongside this, there is still stigma that some people experience, and this can significantly impact people's care.
Is this report, which I think is a first of its kind for a case that has been directly linked, a death that's been directly linked to ME, could this make a difference?
It's certainly a landmark report. There has been previous situation where death has been attributed to ME, but to have a report of this nature that requires response from the recipients of the report is certainly a first, and it's one that we hope will finally see things change.
It points at this lack of expertise, but also lack of specialist beds. Are there other areas that you would highlight?
There are many areas. Many people have been left without supporting care, not just in the health service, but within social care. We hear of children and families subjected to unnecessary child protection proceedings, people who experience difficulties in accessing the benefits that they desperately need. I think it's very unusual to hear of an illness where the most severely affected are often the most severely neglected, and it's about time things changed.
Well, it's, I think, 2.5 years ago since the then Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, said there would be a delivery plan for ME. What has happened to that?
Well, that's a good question. An interim plan was launched after huge input from ourselves and other charities, people with ME and others. And the interim delivery plan was put out for public consultation. It had a massive response, and I know that the Department of Health and Social Care have been working through those responses. Once the election was announced, things were paused, understandably, but we've not had any real update. We're led to believe that something should be launched in autumn, but we've had no recent news on it.
And there has been a statement from the DHSC. It is important we learn the lessons from every Prevention of Future Deaths report, and we will consider the report carefully before responding appropriately. Briefly, what do you think an appropriate response would be?
Well, we need a coordinated response to the 4 areas of concern. The delivery plan could drive this, and at its heart, we need to see a strategic approach to research funding so that we get the scientific knowledge that's needed and treatments can be identified.
Sonya Chowdhury, CEO of Action for ME and chair of the World ME Alliance, thanks very much.